Hey everyone, today we'll be going over LeetCode problem 20, valid parentheses. This is another problem off the Blind 75 list, which is a list of problems commonly asked during technical interviews. In this problem, we are given a string S which contains characters which are only opening or closing brackets. And what we want to do is return whether or not this string of brackets represents a string of valid parentheses. We're given specific rules to determine whether or not this string is in fact a string of valid parentheses. We are told that every opening bracket must be closed by a bracket of the same type, and also that every opening bracket must be closed in the correct order. We're given here an example, and we're given a string with two brackets. One is an opening bracket, and one is a closing bracket. Furthermore, both of these brackets are round brackets. And finally, the closing bracket follows the opening bracket. Because of this, we return an output of true, because every opening bracket is followed by a matching closing bracket, and this closing bracket is of the same type of the opening bracket. We have here another example on the right which I've created for you guys. We have once again a string of brackets, two of which are opening brackets and two of which are closing brackets. Furthermore, two of which are round brackets while two are curly brackets. When going through this string, one might go through it quickly and see we have an opening round bracket, a closing round bracket, and furthermore, we also have an opening curly bracket and a closing curly bracket. Therefore, one might think that this is a valid parenthesis. However, when looking closely, we see that the brackets are not closed in the correct order. In fact, when we go through this string, we first find a round bracket and then a curly opening bracket. The first closing bracket, however, that we find is a closing round bracket. But each parenthesis, each closing parenthesis, must be matched with its most recent opening parenthesis. So when encountering this closing round parenthesis, we see that the most recent opening parenthesis is actually a curly parenthesis, and therefore these cannot be matched. Because of this characteristic, where we must match every closing parenthesis with the most recent opening parenthesis, we use a stack, which has a last in, first out functionality. Let's run through an example with this string. When going through this string, we first encounter the round opening parenthesis. So what we will do is go and put it in our stack to store that we have encountered an opening round parenthesis. We then continue on in our string and found an opening curly parenthesis. So we go and store this into our stack. Subsequently, we encounter our closing round parenthesis. So what we do is we pop out our most recent element in our stack. We see that it's a curly opening parenthesis, and then we compare it to our closing parenthesis that we are currently seeing, which is a round parenthesis. We see that these two do not match, therefore we must return false. To facilitate this comparison of closing parenthesis to correctly matched opening parenthesis, we can use a hash map, which maps the closed parenthesis to the respective opening parenthesis. Let's go through another example with instead a valid string. We first encounter a round parenthesis, so we go and put that into our stack. Following this, we find a closing parenthesis. This closing parenthesis is a round parenthesis. When popping off our round parenthesis from the stack, what we will do is we see that it is in fact matching the correct parenthesis for our current closed parenthesis. So we can pop it off and continue on. We then encounter an opening square bracket, so we go and put that in our stack. Following this, we have another opening round bracket, so we go and put that into our stack. Following this, we have an opening curly bracket, so we add that into our stack. Now we have encountered a closed bracket, and this is a curly bracket. Therefore, what we do is pop off our most recent element from the stack, which is the opening curly bracket. We then see that the closed bracket that we currently see is matching to this last opening bracket. So because the match is correct, we can continue on. We then have a closing round bracket, and once again, we pop our most recent element and make sure it is the correctly matched opening parenthesis, which it is. And finally, we have another closing bracket, which is square. We pop our most recent element off our stack, and we check to make sure that it is the correct matching opening parenthesis, which it is. Now we have reached the end of the string, and we will return true only if we have no more elements in our stack, which in this case, we do not have any more elements in our stack, which means that every opening parenthesis we have found has been matched with a closing parenthesis and in the correct order, so has been removed from our stack. Therefore, in this case, we can return true. This is a linear time complexity algorithm because, as we see, we move through our string only once. So we're back in LeetCode ready to write up our solution. Before starting, I wanted to mention also that in addition to being a linear time complexity algorithm, this is also linear in space. And this is because we are storing in a data structure in a stack all of the opening parentheses we have encountered when going through the string. So we're going to start off our code by creating our stack, which initially will be empty. And then we will be creating our hash map in order to map our closing parentheses to our opening parentheses. Following this, we will go through every parenthesis in our string in a for loop. In this for loop, we will have two cases. One is that we have a closed parenthesis, and the other is that we have an open parenthesis. We will determine if the current parenthesis is a closed parenthesis by seeing if this current parenthesis is a key in our hash map. Then what we want to do when seeing a closed parenthesis is make sure that we can match it correctly with the most recent element in our stack. So we can say that if we have elements in our stack and the last element in our stack is equal to the correctly corresponding open parenthesis, then what we will do is pop that most recent element from our stack. Else, if the most recent element does not match with the current closing parenthesis, then what we will do is return false, because we know that they are out of order. Finally, in the case of finding an open parenthesis, what we want to do is solely add it to our stack. Once we are done with the for loop and having gone through every parenthesis in our string, we want to return true only if our stack is empty, meaning we have correctly matched in the correct order every opening parenthesis to a closed parenthesis. So we can say, if our stack is empty, we will return true. Else, we will return false. Now note saying if not stack is the same as checking if the length of stack is equal to 0. Let's make sure this runs, and we see that it works. Thank you very much for watching this video. If you found it helpful, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel. I'll see you on the next one.